One of the problems these people have is that slights come their way, and they somehow or another think they're the only people in the history of our country to have had a slight leveled at them. Yes. Go back and read the history of the country. Go back and read how women, how blacks, how people in the South, how people in rural America overcame huge obstacles. They didn't quit and say, burn it down. And that's what I fear, this whole effort.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Pull up a chair because this one is going to get your blood moving. Today we're breaking down a Fox News panel where Greg Gutfeld, Dana Perino, Kayleigh McEnany, and Harold Ford Jr. all pile onto a new wave of young progressive candidates surging in New York and Colorado. And they don't hold back. We're talking human beings compared to termites, sneers about who does and doesn't have a real job, and a whole lot of panic dressed up as analysis. I'm going to walk you through exactly what they're really doing and why it says more about them than the people they're attacking. Stick with me all the way through because the final moment of this clip is the one that flips everything on its head. You do not want to tap out before we get there. And I'm curious, drop a comment and let me know what city, state, or country you're watching from. I love seeing how far this community reaches. All right, let's get into it.
Whatever labels you want to attach to it, whatever she said, I believe that we've got to understand that Big Tent means Big Tent.
I'm not afraid of new members or new ideas in the party. I welcome it.
That friction, although it might make for good, press, it's part of being in a coalition.
The reality is we have an unsettled electoral environment, which is going to be the case when Donald Trump is president.
Okay, that was Hakeem preemptively blaming President Trump if the socialist surge takes Colorado next. Radical candidate Melat Kiros looks to ride the commie wave into Congress by unseating a longtime Democratic incumbent, which may be difficult given she thinks Israel deserved October 7th and America deserved 9/11.
You've said that the October 7th massacre of Israeli civilians by Hamas fighters was the, quote, inevitable consequence of apartheid.
Certain conditions lead people to feeling like violence is their only answer.
Was 9/11 an inevitable consequence for America based on U.S. foreign policy?
Inevitable in the sense that we destabilized a lot of the Middle East, that forced people to believe that another act of violence was the only response.
How you doing over there, Harold? Good?
My nose is running.
Okay, I'm going to go to you next. Dana, so this woman doesn't really have a job.
Nope. Well, I mean, that's another look. Start looking at the jobs or the schooling that a lot of the DSA candidates have had. Again, they sound exactly alike. They use the same cadence. They have the same language. They have studied. They work together. They are super organized that way. What Hakeem is doing, and the rest of the Democrats that are doing is they're not making the tent bigger. They're making it more narrow. And the way that that's happening is that the Democrat socialists are using the Democratic Party in order to figure out a way. Okay, so let's figure out a way we can take these voters and we can muscle in. And then, like, for example, Graham Plattner today, this guy, he is trashing Chuck Schumer up one side and down the other. And then today he says, but I need help because I don't have enough money and you have to help me. And so then Hakeem and Chuck Schumer are going to be in this position. Do they support them? Are they going to cave and probably do that? And look at the incumbents that they're throwing out of office. Goldman from last week and Espelot, and the guy we talked about yesterday, well, he's not thrown out, but getting attacked in California. It's not like they are moderate Democrats. They are hardcore progressives. But what's the one issue that they're not solid on that these socialists care about the most? And it's Israel and Jewish people. And they are anti-Semitic. And that is the strain that is driving it. And if Hakeem and Chuck don't believe that accepting these people into the Big Tent doesn't mean exactly what they're trying to do, they're going to have a rough road of it, regardless if Trump's here or not.
This is the part that tells you everything. You've got one of the most powerful elected Democrats in the country, Hakeem, saying something completely reasonable. Hakeem said this: "I'm not afraid of new members or new ideas in the party. I welcome it." And here's what people don't realize. That used to be considered basic political maturity. A party is a coalition. It is supposed to have friction, but watch how fast the panel turns that openness into a weapon. Because the second Hakeem finishes, Greg pivots to Dana and says this: "Dana, so this woman doesn't really have a job. Sit with how lazy that is. You disagree with someone's politics, so your opening move is to sneer at their paycheck? That tells the audience you've already run out of real arguments before the segment even warms up. Then Dana builds on it and says the candidates sound exactly alike, they use the same cadence. Think about what she's really admitting there. A new generation of candidates shows up, organized, disciplined, and on message. And instead of competing with better ideas, the panel acts spooked that they're coordinated. When discipline scares you, it usually means the other side is doing something right, and then it sinks into the ugliest move of the whole opening. Dana says the candidates are anti-Semitic, and that is the strain driving it. That's a massive accusation handed to an entire movement in one breath, with no evidence walked through, no line drawn between criticizing a foreign government and hating a people. You do not get to smear thousands of Americans that casually and call it analysis.
20, even 10 years ago, Greg, if you had a member of Congress who's running on America kind of deserved 9/11, I mean, she wouldn't get anywhere near Congress.
She seemed like she was doing you a favor by answering it. 9/11. I seem to remember that. But I mean, the big tent accepting these people, it's like a tree saying termites welcome. In order to have a tent, you got to have boundaries. The tent itself is a boundary. If everyone is welcome, including the people who wish to destroy you, then what is the point of a tent? It is organizations and groups, families, they're not just defined by who you are, but who you aren't. We do have certain rules to keep people in and out of things, and sometimes that goes crazy. But we do have, somewhere along the line, boundaries were made a sign of bigotry. But there's a reason for intolerance. You do not tolerate bare feet in a restaurant. You do not tolerate grown men in the Girl Scouts. You do not tolerate the obese in the military. I can't be a Harlem Globetrotter, and I can dunk. So does the party have a right to welcome anyone when it affects everyone else in that group? Realistic example, you invite a male rapist into a women's shelter. It satisfies your virtue signal. It's a big tent. But then a woman gets raped and murdered, which is what happened in New York. So again, boundaries exist so the thing survives. And if you say we're going to let these people in who are openly saying they want to destroy America, you're an accessory to the crime. And it isn't a big tent. Like, you're right. There's no pro-lifers. There's no pro-Second Amendment people. It's like a tent with an open flap. And the flap is facing the direction of basically anti-patriotic, anti-Americanism. It's interesting that they call themselves Democrat socialists, because you could never envision Republican socialists. Like, if somebody said, I'm a Republican socialist, you go, no, that's nuts. Mm-hmm. Why can you envision a Democrat socialist? What does that tell you? Mm-hmm. Something about the Democrats. Harold.
Harold, your name was invoked.
So I am as repulsed and disgusted by this young lady's comments, not as much because I think she wants to be a member of my party or claims to be a member of my party, as it is I think she doesn't understand that if she honestly believes what she just said there about we deserved it, she is saying that a group of people who wouldn't allow her to speak the way she's speaking on television, they would kill her. A group of people who wouldn't allow her to dress the way she wants to dress, think the way she wants to think, gain the jobs that try to gain a job like she wants to gain, and then criticize the state as she has. I think these people, Greg, who want to be a part of our tent, I call it the American tent first, and the Republican and Democrat tents are in that big tent. And we may differ on things, but we don't differ on what's fundamental about our country.
Okay, this right here is where the mask comes off completely. Greg looks at the idea of a party welcoming new people and says this: it's like a tree saying termites welcome. Termites. He just compared fellow Americans, people who want to run for office and take part in democracy, to insects that eat your house from the inside. And you have to understand why that language matters. When you call human beings a pest, you're telling your audience they aren't people to argue with, they're an infestation to wipe out. That's one of the oldest and most dangerous rhetorical tricks there is. Then then Greg keeps rolling and says this: "You do not tolerate grown men in the Girl Scouts." Notice that line has nothing to do with anything anyone was actually discussing. It's a swerve dropped in to yank a reaction out of you, because he'd rather make your stomach clench than explain why so many young voters are drawn to these candidates. Here's the history I want you to sit with. Back in the 1930s, the New Deal coalition jammed together northern labor unions, rural farmers, and big city voters who agreed on almost nothing culturally. They fought constantly, and it still became one of the most successful political coalitions this country ever produced. Big tents have always held people who make each other uncomfortable. That discomfort is the entire point of a broad party. And the real tell comes when Greg says you could never envision Republican socialists. He thinks that's a mic drop. What it actually exposes is a mindset that treats any internal disagreement as betrayal. Then Harold Ford Jr., an actual Democrat, jumps in and says this: "I am as repulsed and disgusted by this young lady's comments. Even the supposed counterweight on the panel races to prove his loyalty instead of asking one honest question about why these ideas are winning."
Kayleigh and I had a conversation, a debate about what the 14th Amendment. We didn't have a conversation about what America meant and whether or not we deserve to have people come to our country and destroy it. For anyone to call themselves a Democrat who believes that America deserved 9/11, and she's able to say that in a country that she's defending a group of people who wouldn't allow her to say what she's saying, who wouldn't allow her to be the person that she wants to be and achieve and accomplish the things that she's accomplished. I said it the other day and I'll say it again. They offer no answers. There's nothing constructive. We're the most dynamic, the most innovative, the most creative group of people, economic system and economy in the world. At every point in each of the last few centuries, several centuries, America has faced a challenge to whom we are, where people felt excluded. The answer can't be to burn it down. That's what these people are saying. The answer was, how do we work from within with all the tools and assets and resources we have to make the country better? That's what we ought to be doing. And for those whom are not, and those who want to come into the Democratic Party, there has to be a little bit of an admission fee. And that fee has to be, you understand that the country is great, and our job is to try to make it greater, not burn it down.
Well said, Harold.
Yay.
Kayleigh.
Harold is absolutely correct. But the problem is that there are not enough Democrats that are saying what Harold is saying. I mean, when you look to book Democrats calling this out on your show, as I did last Saturday, you got James Carville, you got Senator John Fetterman. You've got 13 House Democrats that signed a letter supporting Pride in America. You have one other Democrat in Slotkin who kind of tepidly called out this wave of folks in the party and called for new leadership in the Senate. But you can really count on just more than two hands, a dozen or so Democrats calling this out fervently. And one thing James Carville said to me is he said, Hakeem's going to have to deal with this, meaning Hakeem Jeffries. It's not going away. Hakeem, you need to deal with this. That happened Saturday. And Hakeem's way of dealing with this, one of the most powerful Democrats elected to office now, is to congratulate these radicals. He congratulates people like Chevalier, who says communism now sees the means of production. Really? I mean, not only that, you have this Aber Kawas woman who won for the nomination for a state Senate seat in New York, who also has comments not clearly calling out 9/11 and making excuses for it. This is a pervasive radical ideology that could very well win in Colorado yet again tonight, and it's becoming very difficult to say this is a New York problem or an LA problem. It is a problem within the Democratic Party, and I really hope we see bold leaders calling this out the way Fetterman has and a handful of other Democrats. It's the only way you get rid of this.
You can't argue with ignorant and stupid people. That's what I learned in our Bible study. Do you remember that?
I do.
What was the line about you don't waste your breath on really stupid people? I think Jesus said that.
You just shake it off and keep moving.
Yeah, that was not Jesus.
Those people, they're ignorant of history. They're stupid, but they're ignorant of what America is.
Also, the other thing is, like, for her, so Diana DeGette, who she wants to beat, Diana DeGette went to Congress in 1997.
I was elected with her.
Okay, so this young woman, I believe, was born like right around that time. So she was a small child when 9/11 happened. Also, I believe that says that she was canceled during a college class because of something she said against Israel. So she has a grudge to fight against, and she got a following because of all of that, but also because they are very organized. They are super organized. beware.
One of the
And they're
problems these people
attractive.
have is that slights come their
They
way,
are
and they
attractive.
somehow or another think they're the only people in the history of our country to have had a slight leveled at them.
Yes.
Go back and read the history of the country. Go back and read how women, how blacks, how people in the South, how people in rural America overcame huge, huge obstacles. They didn't quit and say burn it down, and that's what I fear this whole effort.
Let me break down why the closing stretch here is so revealing. Harold Ford Jr. sits there and says, anyone who wants to join the party should pay what he calls this. There has to be a little bit of an admission fee. An admission fee. Think about what that actually means. He's turning belonging into a toll booth where you audition your patriotism for a panel until they decide you've earned a seat. And who sets the price? They do. A tent with a bouncer at the door stops being much of a tent at all. Then Kayleigh McEnany says this, there are not enough Democrats that are saying what Harold is saying. She frames it as a failure, but flip it around and it turns into something else entirely. What actually frustrates her is that most Democrats won't publicly turn on their own younger voters just because a cable panel wants them to. A party that refuses to eat its own for the cameras is showing backbone, not weakness. And here's the part that gets me. Greg Gutfeld says this, you can't argue with ignorant and stupid people. He's talking about a whole generation of Americans who showed up, organized, knocked on doors, and won their races. When the strongest response you've got to people winning elections is to call them stupid, you've already lost the real argument. But the closer is what I really want you to sit with. Harold Ford Jr. ends by telling these young activists to go read history, how women, how workers, how people across the country overcame huge obstacles. And then he says this, they didn't quit and say burn it down, and that's what I fear this whole effort. And here's what people don't realize. Every movement he's praising was disruptive in its moment. The labor organizers who won the weekend and the 40-hour week in the 1930s were branded radicals and troublemakers. The people who marched for civil rights were told constantly to slow down, be patient, wait your turn. Progress in this country has never come from politely asking permission. So when a panel celebrates yesterday's disruptors while mocking today's, that isn't a history lesson. It's a comfort blanket. Ask yourself who actually benefits from telling passionate young people to sit down and stay quiet. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.